Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a beautiful narrow gauge steam loco by Bachmann. I would honestly say that the 009 narrow gauge Bachmann models that I've looked at so far are among Bachmann's best models ever. Especially the steam locomotives, I would say, are better than some of Bachmann's 00 standard gauge locomotives. But from what people have told me, the engine I'm looking at today is better than all of those, better than everything. Now, I don't know if that's true because I've never tried one before. Until today, of course. So today I'm very excited to be reviewing this, Bachmann's 009 Ffestiniog double Fairlie locomotive. And I don't know yet whether this is better than all the others or not, but looking at the front of the box, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be. Just look how gorgeous this model looks. And of course the thing that sets this apart from the other 009 models that I've looked at so far is its size. This thing is absolutely huge. In fact, it's larger than some 00 standard gauge locos that I've got, tank engines at least. So really curious to see what this is like. What a beauty this looks. Now at its full price, this costs £234.95, and to say the very least, that is fairly expensive. But I managed to get this at a better price from Kerno at £179.95. That's still a lot of money though for such a small loco. That is much more expensive than many much larger 00 standard gauge locos that I've looked at. But maybe this will be so good that it will knock the socks off those. At the moment, this is even cheaper at certain retailers. The green one is even more affordable than that. But this is a lot of money, so I'm really curious to see whether it's actually worth it. I've heard great things, but I've not experienced this before. So join me, let's take a look at Bachmann's new for 2021, so a few years old now, double Fairlie locomotive. And if you'd like to try one of these for yourself, I do have affiliate links in the description. Okay, let's get started. Alright, super excited to have finally gotten around to reviewing one of these. Back when these were newer, I thought, you know, there's no way I'm paying all that money to review such a tiny little loco. But of course that was before I'd experienced a lot of Bachmann's other 009 locos, before I'd seen how fantastic they were. I think now that I have, I've got a lot more faith that this will actually be worth it. Don't know whether it will be or not, but I think there's a chance looking at some of Bachmann's other efforts. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So there's a lot of info on here. It's product code 391-101, so that's what you need to look up if you want one of these. It is the Ffestiniog Railway Double Fairlie. It's number 10, Merdin Emrys, and it's in the Ffestiniog Railway lined maroon, which looks gorgeous by the way, and it's even DCC ready with a next 18-pin DCC socket. And I believe they did even produce a sound-fitted version of this, which also looked very impressive, but this is just the DCC ready version. Okay, with that, let's try this out. I'm going to experience this thing in my hands for the first time ever. Seen lots of pictures, seen a video or two, I think, of these running, but never experienced one properly in the flesh before. Alright, so there it is. Let's see if we can open this up then. Take a look at the instructions, which I think are these. Alright, so Ffestiniog Railway Double Fairlie. Model spec, so it's got a cordless motor in it. I don't know if it's a single motor. It probably is though. It's got a DCC socket, a speaker, factory fitted to all models. Quite impressive that they managed to fit a speaker into this. And it picks up from all loco driving wheels. Running in, it does need running in. Lubrication, you can see just the axles there need lubrication. Oh, and also the crank pins and such down below there. Let's open this up. DCC decoder and sound fitting. And this looks quite clever. By the looks of it, to chip this, you just remove the panel, this panel between the bogies, and the DCC socket is under there. So that's pretty smart. That means you don't have to disassemble the whole thing to chip it. Very useful. And then we've got a few of the different double Fairlies that Bachmann have produced, and there's tooling variations, I believe, for each of these. So it's quite a complex project from Bachmann, and that's pretty much all there is to see there. So nothing really about the mechanism. I don't know if I dare try and take this apart, but I probably will. All right, we've got accessories too, I think. Yeah, oh yes, I like the look of this already. Let's see what's in here then. Look at those, absolute quality here. Etched nameplates, which are very fine indeed. Some of the text on there is impossibly small, but they've got a lovely, lovely metal finish to them as well. So there are the plates printed onto the model, but obviously they don't have any relief to them and they don't have the proper metallic texture. These look totally different and much, much better. Don't know if I'm going to fit those myself, but it's sure nice to have the option. And for how much this cost, I'm very, very glad they didn't skimp on that. And let's take our first look at the Loco then. So what's the finish like? I can already tell that this has been beautifully painted, but what is the finish like? Let's see. Oh, yeah, the boilers have absolutely gorgeous sheens to them. Look at that. Beautifully shiny, gives them a real look of quality, I think. Okay, let me try and lift this up then. All right. So I would say this is pretty lightweight, yeah, on first impressions. Yeah, it's certainly pretty light for its size, and the sort of boilers, the tanks and such, these are all plastic, although I think the main running plate is made of metal. So it's probably going to be heavier than some of the much smaller 040s that I've looked at. But to say how much larger this is than those, I don't think the weight of this is going to be in proportion to them. But the way this looks is just stunning. I mean, the level of detail, the obvious quality to it is just stunning. I mean, yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Really, really lovely engine, this. And we'll take a much, much closer look at this Loco and its features in just a second. But first of all, let's have a bit of background on this Loco in real life. The double Fairlie was introduced to the design of Robert Francis Fairlie, who patented the design back in 1864. Essentially, this type of locomotive had a single boiler in the centre and was powered along by two sets of independent driving wheels on two separate power bogies. This design allowed for large, heavy locomotives to run on small, narrow gauge railways with extremely tight curves, such as the Ffestiniog railway, of course. The Ffestiniog was opened way back in 1836, and while it is now a preserved heritage railway, originally it was used for the transportation of slate. The first double Fairlie was introduced to the Ffestiniog in 1869, followed by another in 1872. The locomotive we see here, though, Merdin Emrys, was the first double Fairlie to be built at the Ffestiniog's own workshop, Boston Lodge, and she wouldn't be complete until 1879. Today, many double Fairlie style locos can be found on the Ffestiniog Railway, and Merdin Emrys is indeed one of them, and she remains in active service there to this day. So there it is, a close look at Bachmann's extremely attractive 009 double Fairlie. And as you can tell, this is a very complex model that has been incredibly well done. Very high attention to detail and also very high build quality here. And this was extremely expensive, so that is exactly what you'd expect. But I suppose in terms of value, it's more useful to think of this as kind of two locomotives in one, because it's got two of most components. It's got two separate sets of driven wheels, it's got two separate boiler areas, two smoke boxes, two sets of safety valves and whistles and such. It really is like two locos in one. So for the price I paid of £179.95, this is more like two £90 locomotives put together. So when you think about it like that, it actually doesn't seem too unreasonable, although of course they are sharing quite a few components. They share a single motor, they share a single DCC socket. So I think thinking of this as two locos in one makes this seem a little bit less crazy, but still quite expensive. However, in terms of weight, thinking about this as two locomotives in one is much less impressive. So the weight of the double Fairlie is 69 grams, which is, nice, which makes each half weigh less than 35 grams. That's really not a lot. That means that each half of this weighs 10 grams less than Bachmann's Bagley Drury shunter, which means two Bagley Druries would weigh 20 grams more than the double Fairlie, which, yeah, it's not that impressive. And comparing this to Bachmann's Quarry Hunslet, The double Fairlie is actually only equivalent to 2 of these quarry Hunslets plus 3 grams. And the reason is that the bodies of the quarry Hunslet and the Bagley Drury, these are made of metal. The body of the double Fairlie though is almost all plastic, and you can really notice that when you pick it up. So as much as this looks great and as much as it's very, very beautifully detailed and well built, I think they really cheaped out by making so much of this model out of plastic. I think for up to £235, 69 grams is extremely underwhelming. If you're expecting customers to pay that much, I think this model should have been heavier. So yeah, die-cast boilers, I think that would have helped. Die-cast tanks, something like that, that would have really brought the weight up. But we'll talk about the details and such in just a second. Let's start by taking a close look at the decoration. And I think the decoration is where a lot of the money was spent on this model because it's extremely complex. So I don't even know where to start. Well, first of all, the finish is excellent. So as much as all of this is plastic, it has got a quality sort of metallic finish to it. So the way the model looks is not an issue at all. It's just the way it feels. The boilers on both sides have full banding on them, which has been beautifully printed. The smoke boxes have builder's plates on them, which are fully legible, as you'd expect. The tanks have several different types of lining. I can see cream lining, black lining, and orange lining on the tanks, as well as a black border. Looks great. And even the printed plates on the tanks, these look good as well, even though there are separate etched ones available to fit in the accessories pack. The running plates are made of metal, and I really like the profile of these. They're kind of rounded at each end, which is interesting. Very precisely lined yet again. Each of the cylinders, and of course there's 4 on this model, are fully lined. And this again is complex with lots of different colours used, and there's even little separately fitted and separately painted valves on each cylinder as well. The cab is just a work of art here because there's this beautiful symmetry to it. You've got these gorgeous crests on each of the cab walls, very, very beautifully printed, loads of lining, of course, and there's another colourful print above each crest. Too small for me to see, but hopefully the close-up lens will do a good job of showing that. But yeah, this area in particular is really gorgeous. Let's talk about some of the detailing then. So there are lots of metal handrails on here, and these have got a kind of sort of brass colour to them, I would say, and these are real brass parts too, which is great. So you've got those on top of the tanks and also around the smoke box areas. So much better than seeing these made of plastic. I think the Pico Small England, that had a lot of plastic handrails and they didn't look as good as these. These look fantastic. We've got these look a little bit like pumps or something. Maybe they're vacuum pumps. But look at the metallic part on top of those. I don't know whether that's real metal or whether it's just painted with high quality paint, but the effect there is very realistic. We've got all sorts of pipe work along here, as you can see, also down by the smoke box. We've got vacuum pipes pre-fitted as well. There's detail up on top of the tanks. There's these little hooks, maybe they're for lifting the Loco. We've got coal bunkers over on the other side. So yeah, these Locos are not the same on each side. Quite realistic little coal loads there. We've got the chimneys, which are separately fitted, and also these domes are separately fitted. Not the greatest precision to these domes. As you can see, the recess in the boiler that they fit into is quite large, so there's big gaps around those. On a model that's otherwise very well finessed, it's a little bit surprising to see those not looking quite as tidy. Behind there though, we've got the safety valves and the whistles. These are plastic, I believe, but again painted with relatively high quality paint, which looks good. The windows are glazed, as you can see. Nice flush glazing on these, which is quality. And the cab interior is very detailed indeed. There's lots of separately fitted controls which are painted. As you can see, this lever here is connected to a little shaft on both sides, so presumably this one lever will control the 2 halves at the same time. And we've got all sorts of different components here, pipework, gauges. The gauges have been printed as well, by the way, so very detailed, marvellously so. The wheels and the coupling and connecting rods look fantastic. We've got these disc style wheels which are nicely produced, and the coupling and connecting rods look extremely fine, made of metal of course, and the cylinders and crossheads and such, again these are all made of metal, and they look very convincing because of how fine they are. So really looking forward to seeing these in motion. I think the sight of these two sets of driving wheels running at the same time is going to be really something to see. Right, is there anything else I've missed? Well, we've got the front of the smoke box door, of course, and these have these handles pre-fitted to them. We've got the 009 style couplings pre-fitted to either end. These are NEM, I believe, so you can pull them out and exchange them if you want to. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of what we're dealing with here. The level of detail is certainly very, very impressive, and from that angle you can understand why this would be quite expensive. I think really though, to fully justify that price tag, this should have just been a bit heavier. It is very plasticky. 69 grams for something as large as this does seem to be very much on the light side. However though, because of how massive this is, it is much heavier than the other 040s that I've looked at in 009, so it should be a good deal more powerful than those. But that's the big question, isn't it? How does this perform? Is it reliable? Is it as good a runner as some of Bachmann's other 009 locos? The standards are very, very high here. Interested to see this run. So there she is, Bachmann's absolutely stunning looking double Fairlie down onto the track. And I've already filmed the initial performance test, so I'll show you all that in just a second. After that though, I decided to take this apart because I was really curious to see how this thing worked. So let's go over the mechanism. First things first then, I was interested to see how easy it is to access the DCC socket on this loco. And the answer is pretty easy. So there's this hatch just underneath the cab, which is held on with 4 screws, and the hatch is a pretty tight fit, but you can get it off without too much trouble. And right there underneath it is the next 18-pin DCC socket. So it's really convenient to chip. You do have to remove screws, but you don't have to take the body off. So yeah, chipping this is no problem whatsoever. In terms of the base keeper plates, these are screwed on, not clipped on. That's pretty good for a model this small. 3 screws hold these on, and if I take the base off, you can see we've got proper bearings on the driving axles. Again, great quality as usual from Bachmann in 009. And each bogie has just a single driven axle, and it's always the axle closest to the end. Very small and quality looking gears, these. Each wheel does have a wiper pickup to it. You won't be able to see it too well, but these are fixed to the bogies. And if you pull the wheels out, you should be able to clean these without too much trouble. So all-wheel pickup, that's really good to see. Now, because the DCC socket is so easy to access without removing the body I don't think is really designed to be removed. But you can do it. There are just 10 screws around the loco, which are a bit of a pain to get to in some cases. And I did struggle to get the body off. Parts of it were sort of connected to the chassis via some detailed parts and pipe work and such, but I did manage to get most of it off, and there's really not much to the chassis, as you can see. There's a lot of empty space in here, which is a shame given how light the loco is, because this really could have been used to add some more weight to the model. Yeah, a few weights in the tanks would have been really good. But you can see how it works. It works basically like a 00 diesel does. So we've got a motor mounted inside the cab, a pretty large cordless motor actually, and then that's connected to the bogies via 2 drive shafts. Now unfortunately there are no flywheels on these drive shafts, which again is a real shame because there would have been space for a flywheel on each side if Bachmann had chosen to do that. Again, flywheels would have contributed to the weight as well. And then we've got these tiny little gear towers on each bogie, little tiny worm drive in each of these, and then obviously you've got the gears going down to those axles. No lighting or anything on the chassis, it's just very, very simple. Motor, speaker, that's your lot really. And then the back-to-back gauging comes in at 7.2 to 7.3 millimeters, pretty reliably. No issue at all with the gauge of that. So yeah, again, I think Bachmann are really leading the way in 009 in terms of mechanism quality. This model might be small and it might be pretty complex for its size, but it's still got a really good quality mechanism. Great motor, it's got the bearings, it's serviceable, it's accessible. Really, really impressed with this, except for the lack of flywheels, which is a shame, but overall that's not a massive issue. So with that, let me jump back in time and reveal how this thing ran. Alright, I'm going to drive it for the first time then. So, set direction. Does it work at all? High expectations for this performance. Here we go. Well, it moves. It stopped. It's hit the curb. Oh no. just saved itself before I put a finger on it. Now obviously this is not running at this point, and I will run this in before judging it on performance. And it doesn't seem to be stopping now, no. So it was obviously just getting warmed up there. Alright, so it seems nice and smooth, a little bit on the noisy side, but I suppose that's because there's a fair bit of mechanism here in order to get motion to both of those powered bogies. Alright, what's the speed and gearing like then? Is that realistic? That's 50% speed, that's half power. Yeah, it's pretty good actually. You do tend to find that these narrow gauge locos can race along quite a bit. And it's certainly not slow at half speed, but it does seem controlled, I would say. Yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty good. It's going over the points there without stopping. And of course, this is a great wheel configuration for 009, at least in, yeah, here in model form, because it's got quite a wide wheelbase. All of the wheels pick up. It's not really going to be affected by points. There's always going to be wheels touching the metal track. It's really good. Right, so it's not a heavy loco, so it should have a fair bit of torque. I'm not expecting to see this sort of struggle on the torque test, but let's see. So 50%. Yep. So plenty of torque in the mechanism. That's really, really good. Yeah, doesn't seem to mind that. And finally, let's see what the crawl is like. It's already going pretty slow, but can it really, really crawl? Let's see. Turn this up slowly. I think we can do better than that. Oh yeah. It's creeping along. Little bit inconsistent. I've not actually touched the controller for a little while, and it has fluctuated a fair bit in speed, but again, it's not running yet. That might improve. It is very, very slow and controlled though. Accelerate steadily. Okay, so this is performing as a premium model should. This is very, very impressive. In reverse, I'm not really sure what is reverse. Does it have a reverse? Because it's pretty much the same on both sides, isn't it? But the opposite direction to the first direction. That was Ponzi. All right, yeah, just as good. Slower. Yep. I think it might have stalled there a bit more. But still, at this track gauge, that is pretty good. Lovely. Right, let's see how it gets on around the track then. And I'll run it in for 30 in each direction. So forwards, or what I'm calling forwards, at 50. All right, there she goes. And yeah, that's very sensible, actually. I would say that's one of the best geared 009 locos I've seen. Possibly that's because there's just a bit more room for a better gearbox in here. Yeah, I don't know, but this is very sensible. And of course, because it's being geared sensibly, it's also able to crawl very, very well, despite being a pretty complex model mechanically. You know, you've got 2 moving bogies, 8 wheels in total driven. That's quite a lot for a single motor, and yet it's turning all that as though there was no load there at all. So yeah, mechanically this is impressive. I've not seen the mechanism yet, but I just know it's going to be good. You guys will know whether or not it is because you'll have seen that section. But yeah, I'll let this run in, then I'll film the mechanism, then we'll all be up to speed. Then we'll come back and test the couplings, see how the performance has changed after running in, and of course give this some ratings. But gosh, yeah, I am thoroughly enjoying this. There's nothing better than a good looking 009 loco that runs extremely well, and this really does. Oh, brilliant. I'll be back shortly then, folks. See you in just a second. Alright folks, that is running in complete, and what a delightful and also reliable runner this is. Yeah, it is just a joy to run, as basically all of Bachmann's 009 narrow gauge locos are. Yeah, not a single issue with this. It's reliable thanks to all its pickups. The speed is very sensible, much more so than other 009 locos I've tried. Yeah, no issues whatsoever. I am going to just demonstrate the performance of this over the points, just to show that it can do that, and then we'll do a little bit more testing on the ground level like this. So let me open up these points and I'll slowly send the loco over them. It looks like a really mean test, but of course in real life the Fairlies were designed to negotiate tight curves, and she's done that forwards. Yeah, or backwards. Getting my directions mixed up again. Other way, taking it quite steady. Oh, bit of a bump there. Are we okay? Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, all the wheels are still on the track. So yeah, handling points quite nicely, as you can see. Yeah, very, very pleasing. And these are N scale points as well, not necessarily 009 ones. So quite good that it's fully compatible with those, although, yeah, it does seem to be jumping a little bit as it goes back over those curves. So maybe not something to be done too often. And yeah, I think the wheels might have jumped off that time, actually. So yeah, maybe a little bit of an issue over points there, but I'm not going to go too hard on them for that, because these points are not designed for 009. Although I suppose a lot of people do run 009 stuff on N-gauge track, so do bear that in mind. Right, let's take another look at this Loco's range of speeds then, and like I say, it's very, very sensible. A lot slower than a lot of the other 009 Locos, and I'm going to run another one in a second to show you the difference. Yeah, great range of speeds though. That's half speed, which is pretty fast. If you really want it to fly, of course it can. Bit unrealistic going that quick though, I suppose. And then of course, yeah, down at the slow speeds, it's also really well able to crawl. So let's try this again, easing up slowly. Oh yeah, look at that. A little bit more. Yeah. Outstanding and reliable as well. I think when it stops, it's the motor that's stalling rather than the pickups breaking contact, because it doesn't do that once you kind of speed it up above the absolute snail's pace. Look at that. And then a gradual acceleration. Yeah, it's beautifully smooth at all speeds. And just seeing it run along at this kind of speed, I don't know, it just seems delightfully realistic, doesn't it? And of course, not stuttering or stopping on the points, which is good as well. So fantastic, a really, really good performer. And I have to say that does not surprise me, because most of them are from Bachmann. Right, so in terms of a train for this to couple up to, I've only got the slate wagons at the moment. Obviously, these days, this Loco would be hauling passenger coaches, and those are available in 009. I just don't have any yet, so maybe that's something for another day. For now, though, let's back up and see if I can couple up to the freight. Or the slate. Whatever. Same thing. Okay, let's take this nice and steady, see if we can do it. Ah, again, kind of my fault for doing this on a curve, but I thought I'd probably get away with this. Let's try it again. See if I can see what's happening. Yeah, I thought that would have done it. Okay, let's do it on the straight then, never mind. Okay, take two. Ah, for goodness sake, why do I keep getting the direction wrong? I don't know. Right, look how steady you can be. And yeah, clearly that has worked. So yeah, it looks like the couplings are at the right height and everything. It's just the fact that these are on a curve that caused the problems. So there we go, we are coupled. All right, let's see how she gets on with a load then, although, yeah, it's not going to be an issue, is it? Let's go nice and steady. There we go. And on the other line, I've got the Small England class, which is another Ffestiniog Loco that I've got. This one's made by Pico, and as you can see, the livery just doesn't quite look as good. Oops, just give it some juice. Yeah, it's just missing that kind of nuance of the livery that I think Bachmann do so much better. Let's wait for Bachmann's to come by again. Yeah, I just think the colours look richer, the finish is more realistic, the print work is finer. Yeah, it is different, isn't it? And of course, the Small England runs much, much faster. The gearing's not as good, so I'm going to connect this now to the same controller. I've done it, but it's not moving. It must have just cut out. Oh, yeah, you can see how much quicker it is there. Yeah, I think you can clearly see the difference there. So this is why I think Bachmann are a cut above the rest when it comes to 009. Better gearing just means better performance at this scale. These Locos aren't supposed to run fast, they're supposed to be slow and controlled, and Bachmann's just do that better, I always find. But yeah, it is beautiful. What a gorgeous looking Loco. It's a great prototype from the start, and it took a manufacturer like Bachmann to bring that to life in 009, and they've done that really, really well. Yeah, what a gorgeous, gorgeous model. Can't quite believe the level of complexity, particularly in the decoration, on something that is so small. And the fact that it works so nicely as well, and they've not really had to compromise the way it looks in order to motorise this, is also astoundingly impressive, I think. So a beautiful model, great performance. It did cost a lot of money, yeah it did, and aspects of the model I don't think are worth it, but on the other hand, I think you do get what you pay for, don't you? It's a very, very beautiful and complex model which works really well. So while it was expensive, no real complaints from me. Let's have some ratings then for Bachmann's 009 Double Fairlie. Level of detail I've had to give 5-star. This is absolutely tremendous. The decoration is amazingly complex. Great rich colours, so much lining, so many different prints, and they've even provided etched nameplates for this Loco. Decoration amazing. You've also got incredible cab detail, loads of separately fitted parts including pipework. It just is fantastic. I've given it 5-star. Performance also 5-star. This crawls marvellously, it runs beautifully reliably even across the dead zones of points and such. It is a fantastic performer. Just bear in mind though, this doesn't work very well on Pico N-gauge points. I'm not knocking it down for that because obviously really this should be running on track designed for 009 Locos. Whether it will have trouble over those points, I'm not sure, but I'm not going to knock it down for not doing well on my N-scale points. But if you are wanting to run this on N-scale points, bear in mind you're going to have to modify something, whether it's the Loco or the points, I'm not sure, in order to get these to work. Otherwise though, 5-star, fantastic performance. Pulling power, unfortunately I don't have the tools to measure this, and the Loco's not that heavy, so I wouldn't expect amazing things out of this. However, it is heavier than the 040s, so it's going to be much better at hauling than they are, and it's also got decent torque in the mechanism too, so it's far from weak, I would say. Mechanism again is really, really good. I've given it 4.5 stars. So it's got all-wheel pickup, wiper pickups on the wheels, proper bearings on the driving axles, nice easy access to everything including the bearings and the DCC socket. That's really good. Quality cordless motor that works fantastically, and it's also quite large given the small size of the Loco. It just doesn't have flywheels though. I think that's a pity. There was room for a flywheel, I think, on that shaft. A small flywheel on either side could have even further improved the performance, I think, but overall this is not a massive issue. Quality then, I've given 4-star. Now the quality of the build is excellent. So many little parts, all of them fitted perfectly, no issues with the decoration, no visible glue or anything like that. My only grievance with this is the light weight of the thing. 69 grams does seem very light when you can pay up to £235 for this. If the body had more metalwork on it and perhaps the insides of the model were filled with weight, this would feel more like a £180 model. It doesn't, so I can't give it 5-star. That brings us on to value then, which I think is the weakest aspect of this model. So the full RRP of £234.95 I think is too much for this. The model is certainly very complex, so you can understand why this model isn't dirt cheap, but for that amount of money I'd expect maybe a few extra features and certainly a bit more weight. Same sort of thing for £180 really. That's £10 more than your typical double hose scale Acura scale diesel, with all that complexity and features that those models have. Look at this in comparison, it doesn't seem to be quite such good value. Now obviously the Acura scale diesels, they are sold in much higher numbers, so it's not surprising that those are more affordable, but in terms of a modeler looking at what they can get for a certain amount of money, this isn't as good a value as other models out there, even though there are good reasons for that. So that's why it gets 2.5 star on value, the weakest part of the model. Overall though, that is 8.36 out of 10, still a very good score and a grade of B. Obviously, if the price was a bit more reasonable, this would be an A, no question. Overall, a fantastic, fantastic model that looks just amazing. Anyway, into the logbook it goes, and it's 10th, so it has made it into the top 10. It's above the Class 40 by Bachmann and below Hornby's Q1. So, all in all, I would say I think this is the best looking 009 narrow gauge Loco I've ever tried. It's also up there among the best performing as well. I don't think it's my favourite because the Bagley Drury that Bachmann produced also looked amazing and ran well, but that was also much higher quality as well. Lots of metal on board, it felt sturdy, it was worth the money, and also much cheaper than this. So I don't know that this is my favourite, but it's certainly possibly the most impressive, shall we say that? Yeah, I mean, the amount of detail on what is still a very small Loco is just stunning, and this model just brilliantly captures the real life prototype. I have seen a double Fairlie in real life, and this model is a dead ringer for them. Yeah, it's a very, very good job from Bachmann. So if you are interested in these models, I do have affiliate links down in the description. Check them out if you're interested. There's a few different versions of this model available, including some green versions as well. So check them out if you're interested. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you thought about this one. Comment down below. Have I been too harsh? Have I not been harsh enough? Or the things I didn't notice that you did? Please do let me know. For now though, thank you ever so much once again for watching, and I'll catch you again very, very soon for another review. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.